Alrighty, well, hello everybody. You can see I'm in a new environment today, staying at a friend's house, but that doesn't mean I can't do a little Adobe Live with you, of course. So here we are together for a really nice in-depth look at the summer 2023 brushes. These are now available worldwide for everybody out there who wants to check them out. So I look forward to seeing all the stuff that you guys are going to make with these. Once again, I've decided that it's really important for me to create a nice variety of brushes for everybody, and I wanted to make sure that you had things you could paint with, things you could draw with, things you could add special effects with, textures, all the great stuff that we usually try and include in these quarterly brush updates. So there you go. I say hi to some folks who are joining us here. I see Penny Doodles. What's up, Penny Doodles? And Frank. I know you, Frank. And Sam and Oliver, and I see Sean. What's up, Sean? Thanks for joining us. Afroha's here. Hello, Afroha. Afroha's saying hello to everybody. This is our nice, normal Adobe Live crew. A lot of wonderful, loyal watchers from all over the world. Agnieszka. Wow, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. What a cool name. Thank you for joining us as well. All right, gang. So we are going to take a look at these brushes. These are really fun, and I think you're going to love them. So here we go. We are transitioning over here to Photoshop. You can see that I was just playing around with them already. This took all of maybe like 3 minutes to draw. Just a little wizard kind of fellow out here in the woods using about 5 or 6 of these summer brushes. And one of the things I love about these is you start making marks and you respond to the marks that you see. And that's one of the things that is really exciting about working with custom brushes is they kind of force you to work in a way you wouldn't normally work. And when I say force, I don't mean in a violent and aggressive and horrible way. I just mean that they suddenly open your eyes to the possibilities of making new and different marks that could be anything. And one of the other beautiful things about this is that I designed the brushes with some little ideas in mind about how you may or may not use them in your work. But then the cool thing is that lots of people will use them in a way that I never could have predicted. And so they're really versatile. And it's really just coming down to your imagination, your particular style, and the way that you think through your work. All right, so we'll clear away this little guy here, make a new layer. And we're going to go one by one through these brushes and give you some ideas about how to use them. All right, starting with the Halftone Weaver. So those of you who are familiar with my brush sets know that I have a whole lot of halftone brush options for you in the halftone and screen tone brush set, which you can grab on the Adobe Brushes page. If you don't know what I'm talking about, head on over here in your brushes panel to a tiny little drop down menu up there in the corner, and you're going to see this option to, voila, get more brushes. Now when you select that, you're going to be taken magically whisked away to the Adobe Brushes download page where you can sign in with your Adobe credentials, your ID and password, and then bam, you've got the motherload. You've got over 2,000 brushes that you can download and play with. And one of the brush sets in there is the Halftone and Screen Tone brush set. Now this Halftone Weaver in the summer brushes works exactly like the others, which means that you can use very light pressure as you draw, and then increase the pressure with your stylus to go all the way to a full opaque mark. Now what's great about this is you can vary the texture anywhere from very little to kind of a medium amount to a heavy amount to basically none at all. And being able to control that with pressure gives you all kinds of cool options. Now, of course, the texture itself can be modified and changed for you simply by opening up your brush settings right here. And inside the brush settings, head on over to texture. And this is something that people don't know about the halftone brushes, and you can play around with these on your own. You can just take the scale right here at the top, and you can adjust that scale to your liking depending on the size of the work you're doing, or just simply reducing the size of the texture for whatever it is that you are creating. So as a default, you'll see that the texture reads like so, okay? But I can simply reduce that, and if you look down here, you'll notice that you can get a nice preview of what that's going to look like. So let's reduce it to like 25% and then draw with it right here. Ah, look at that. Okay, so right away you can see all of the ways that you could use a brush like this at different scales for the texture in your work. Something like this could be maybe animal fur, or maybe a carpet, or it could be something that you do with foliage. anything. And then something like this could be more like a rocky texture. Okay, and you can combine the two, draw over one texture or another, like so, and combine them like this. Okay, and get some pretty nifty effects. Check that out. All right, so that's the halftone weaver. And I think, you know, with a scale like this, for example, so one of the things I could imagine doing would be I could reduce my brush size so I get some more control over the brush, and then maybe do something like this, where I could draw maybe the silhouette of some nice textured hair. Look at that. Super fun. Okay. And then what I could do is, in this same brush set, we have an inking tool right down here, the smashed felt tip, right? And I could just go ahead and add a little silhouette right there. And that's a pretty cool way to draw a person, don't you think? What do you think about that, gang? Pretty fun, right? Zoom in 100%, you can see all that nice texture in there. So really, it's up to you. So many cool things you could do with this. Alrighty, slide that over there. Let's head on back to the top of the list, and let's carry on with the strange wave. So the way strange wave works is it actually responds to pen pressure to control the direction of the brush. You don't often see this in Photoshop brushes. Normally, the direction is controlled by the direction you're actually moving the stylus, or the tilt or angle of the pen. But in this case, look at that. As I increase the pressure, it changes the direction. So you get some super weird, wonky stuff going on with this. Okay? Just a tiny modification right there in the middle of that brush stroke to the amount of pressure that I was applying changed the stamp rotation so that you get this sort of sideways. I'll show you here what I mean. See how the lines are kind of moving slightly up and to the right from the left, but they're mostly horizontal. And then suddenly, as you go through the middle here, right, they change the direction to something slightly more vertical and then back again to horizontal. That's coming with just a very, very, very subtle change in the amount of pressure that I'm using. Now, if I bear down and then lighten up, I can get these kind of twisting effects as well. Okay? So why would you use something like this? Well, one of the reasons is to fill in an area with a very interesting sort of a pattern that's randomized and that has some really nice stuff, because if you look inside of the brushstroke itself, there's also a secondary texture that's being used here. And so this gives you something you just can't get with any other brush. So for example, if I just create a shape using my lasso tool or my marquee tool, let's just go ahead and do that. All right, so here's a shape. Now I'm going to use this brush and I'm going to draw inside of it with varying amounts of pressure. Okay? Now, how on earth would you go about achieving something like this without a custom brush? I do not know. But the ability to be able to do something like that so easily is very cool. So you can use this as a textural sort of assistant, if you will, but you can also draw with it. And what I like to do when I draw with it, and you'll see me do this a lot with brushes like this, is draw trees. Let me show you what I mean. I'll reduce the brush size, come up here, and I'm using a uniform amount of pressure as I draw upwards. And you can see that that creates lines that are mostly consistent all the way through. But I'm going to come back down through it with less texture and create more of those sort of horizontal lines, like this. Okay? And that could be, now with some variation, a really lovely tree trunk right there. Now if I reduce the size further, I can come up from this way, create a little branch, pass back down over it, like so. Reduce the size further, draw another branch. Now let's zoom in and take a look at that. Imagine you're doing a little picture book or some background work in your illustration and you want to quickly throw in a little tree shape like so. Well, you can do it with this kind of a brush, and you can automatically add some really lovely textures and some patterns inside that silhouette. What do you think about that? Looking at the comments, I see we have some more folks joining us. What's up, Oliver and Donette? Nice to see you, Steve, as well. And Bruce, hello. Thanks for joining us. I see Sivakumar is here as well. What's up? Peter, how you doing? How many brushes do you figure Kyle's created? Peter, I've made about 2,200 so far. More on the way every quarter for you, my friends. All right, so there you go. Yeah, the tree. I'm glad you like that idea. Definitely something that you could do very easily on your own. Well, look at the Strange Wave D here. Now, the difference between these two brushes is right off the bat, you're going to see more of a sort of grainy texture. Well, what's happening there is that we're using the same brush, basically. There are a couple of small modifications, but we're adding a drawing mode of dissolve. If you look up here, you'll see that I have my various drawing modes for my brush. And now for the other Strange Wave, we were setting the brush to normal, but here we're using dissolve. And what that does is it makes it that so you cannot use any gray scale, okay, from 0 to 100, black through to white. You can't use any gray scale gradations in the work. It's either going to be black or nothing. You can see that if I zoom in at the pixel level. It's all just black, okay? Whereas if I zoom in here, you'll see all kinds of variations of gray, all right? So that's the difference between those two brushes. So one is obviously highly more textural. It's also going to be great for doing things like screen print work, okay, and anything else where you need to have your ink be either 100% on or not there at all, okay? So there you go. If you want to work with a limited color palette, you can use this Strange Wave D brush, and looks like there might be some gray values in there, but that's really just however close together those pixels are to one another, okay? So there you go. I find that to be useful for situations where I just want to use a very limited color palette, and I think it can work really well for that. All right, we'll hide this for a moment, and let's carry on with Uncle Pigmentia. So if we jump back to the fall 2021 brush set, I believe it is. Let's see. You will see the Pigmentia and Pigmentia Edge brushes. Now, these brushes were really popular, and a lot of my coworkers also like to use them, including my buddy Matt Carlson. Go follow him on TikTok if you're not already following Matt, Twitter. Check out his awesome drawings. But Matt really liked the Pigmentia brush, and I liked it too. And the Pigmentia brush, the original, I'll show you what that looks like when you draw with it. Lots of really nice texture in there and some edges that are pretty varied, okay, soft to hard, as well as some leave-offs that are going to change every time you draw with it, as well as provide you with some textures that you don't normally get if you just use the light pressure. Okay, so this is a very versatile brush. But let's take a look then at our summer 2023 brush set again, and you're going to see Uncle Pigmentia. So I have a sort of family of brushes here. Now, Cousin Pigmentia came out, I believe, 2 brush sets ago, and this is Uncle Pigmentia. All right, now, same basic brush shape, but you'll notice that the interior texture and the leave-behinds are different, okay? So take a look at that. The interior texture of Uncle Pigmentia has sort of a wavy appearance to it, right? And this is all hand-drawn. I make my own textures, and I take full advantage of Photoshop's amazing pattern preview mode. If you go to View and use Pattern Preview, okay, you'll be able to make seamless tiling patterns very easily. And that's the way that I very easily create my own specific texture files for my brushes, okay? Now, like I said, this one has a nice wavy look to it. We have the same range of light to dark that you would get with the original Pigmentia, but because of the texture and because of the dual brush that are involved, you're going to get a very different look on the interior. And like I said, those leave-behinds are different as well. So playing with these two brushes together will get you some pretty nice results. And again, like any brush, you can, of course, reduce the size and get a lot of control, okay? If you want to be really specific, carving out a little shape and drawing inside. Now, if I use full pressure, I will be able to go all the way to a solid opaque mark if I wish, okay? So you do have that option as well. The shaper basic. Now, a lot of times I'll name a brush with the word basic. Now, when I do that, what I'm really referring to is sort of a library of brushes for people who do a lot of digital painting work, okay, where they're just rendering or doing maybe concept work and they're trying to get a rough idea down. These are basic brushes you can go back and forth with to do what I would call sort of the most popular workflows for digital art, which is, if you're working in the entertainment industry, working on book covers and things like that, where you have to do rendering and painting, these basic brushes are going to be your best friends. So Shaper Basic is a brush that works just like that. It's going to allow you to just make a lot of really opaque marks if you need them, but also some lighter marks. And they take advantage of another custom texture. This is really the kind of thing that just increases, I think, the level of finish when it comes to this kind of work. Really gives you options that you can't normally have with just a plain old brush that doesn't have a texture file affiliated with it that can do some interesting things. But this brush, what I love about it is you can go really small and you can do line work with it, okay? And that line work still has a nice quality to it. But you can also beef it up super big, like 800 pixels, and go to town, right? Like a lot of my brush stamps, this one was originally designed to be very large so that you could increase the size without visible pixelation, all right? Now, if you think about using this as a brush for doing concept art and things like that, you could just quickly throw in sort of a sky up here, okay? And decrease the brush size and just get your landscape sorted down here as well. You can see how nice this is for just really quickly roughing stuff in. Okay, go ahead and grab some white. I'm using the eyedropper tool to do that. And now when I pass back over this, you'll see that with light pressure, I'm able to go ahead and make a mark that is going to knock back all that texture and that tone, okay? So this sort of additive subtractive thing is a very common way of working, pushing stuff back, right? So our sky now takes on a bit more personality. There you go, all right? And then if you want to get into nitty gritty, you go ahead, size the brush down and go to town with some of the details, got a little building here, a little kind of castle. Like that. Knock it down smaller. How am I doing that, by the way? I'm using my bracket tools, okay? If you're not used to using the bracket keys, I said tools, bracket keys on your keyboard. They're your best friends, they're gonna make it so you can make your brush bigger and smaller really quickly with keyboard commands. And I'm a huge keyboard command fan, and something that I'm always teaching in all of my live streams. And then we have a little figure, little character right there, just hanging out in the doorway. Okay, there you go. Maybe there's a dragon up here. Okay, so this is Shaper Basic, really great for just getting ideas down, but you can also work with it for details and things like that. Like I said, the basic brushes, they do basic stuff, but as always, I want to add some interesting textures in there for you. So if I zoom in, you should be able to see there's a lot of cool stuff happening inside those areas that are not fully opaque, okay? Also helps to kind of unify everything, that texture file really does a good job with that. So moving on to the Fiction Science brush. What on earth is this thing? Well, I don't know. Here's your answer. So what does this do? Well, it just puts down this kind of cool geometric kind of pattern. No mark is going to be identical to the last, all right? If I put this down here and then do that, you'll notice these are in no way similar, other than, of course, you can see that there are angles that are similar and there are interior shapes that are similar, but they're not exactly in the same location. This is a function of the beautiful dual brush action that you can get in Photoshop, as well as the interaction with the brush stamp, dual brush, and the texture file as well. Now, this brush, like a lot of other brushes I design, if you look over here at the brush settings, has color dynamics employed, which means if I grab another color and paint with it, you'll see that the hue and the value are going to change randomly as I paint with the brush. And this helps you to put down marks that do not fill an area, all right, all with one specific color, but they allow for you to have this nice variation in there. And this is really great for backgrounds, for textural stuff, for just filling in color and not wanting it to look too flat. All right. So how would you use a brush like this? Well, I don't know. You tell me in the chat. But, you know, my first ideas are always going to things like architecture and machinery and robots and things like that. Anything that has more of sort of a built look to it rather than a grown look to it. Which is not to say you couldn't do more organic things with it, but you know, using my polygonal lasso here and designing like the shape of a building, sci-fi kind of action, like so. And then taking a brush like this and just filling it like so. Grab a different color, hit some bits and pieces. And then go super dark, just along certain parts of it here. Maybe that suggests different surfaces, you know, things like that. And there's my cool sci-fi building silhouette, okay? And all those neat shapes that happen inside that selection really help to give the illusion of there being different levels and floors and windows and building details in the structure, etc. Jack's here. What's up, Jack? Thanks for joining us. What's up, Gareth? Umacorn, I hope I said hi to you earlier. Thank you. Glad you like the texture. Yeah, these are fun. I agree. Thanks, Afroha. Glad you like that idea. Well, I know you have some of your own ideas that'll be way better. The Arrow Grunge brush. Well, what do we do with this thing? Okay, let's take a look at that. Why is it called this? Well, sometimes I like to name things a little obviously. So this is an Arrow Grunge brush because it's grungy and it's got sort of an arrow shape to it. Ta-da! So whichever direction you draw, you're going to get that arrow kind of moving. Now, of course, with this, you can think of things like, you know, tread marks, right? From tires, maybe bike tires or cars, etc. But don't let that limit your imagination. You know, maybe you want to draw some trees and things like that. You just want to use this. What's stopping you? Just do it. There are no rules with brushes. Remember, you just do what you think is going to be fun, right? Maybe I make a little canopy like that. I can hold down the tilde key and I can erase with the brush. And if you don't have a North American keyboard, you can change the brush mode to clear right here. Mode clear for the same effect. Alrighty. Look how fun this is. Sure, you can do a little tree. Go back to that strange wave, right? And get yourself a little tree trunk right there. It's just whatever you want to do, right? These are just shapes, nothing fancy. All right, but you can do whatever you want with these. You can take that whole thing, lock the transparency, and then grab that halftone weaver and just fill it all with halftone weaver action. And go dark and do this. See that? Make it a little smaller. All that with locking layer transparency and just playing around, right? I didn't know I was going to do that. That just happened. This is the beauty of experimenting like this, okay? You don't know what you're going to do until you do it. Let's look at the Viper brush. Ooh-wee. Now, how is that happening? There is a interior, see that? There's a sort of a pattern on the interior as you draw. You can tell why it's named Viper, because to me, this just makes me feel, think of like a snake. And you see those little patterns emerge on the inside, okay? Especially when you draw a cross like that. These little geometric things happening on the inside. So this one, once again, is responding to, see that? Pen pressure to change the direction. So if I go in this direction, light, 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 heavy, light, light, light. You can see it go in one direction and then back to the other, right there. So what do you want to do with something like this? Well, what if you do this? Pull it across again, pull it across again with a lighter pressure back here, a little smaller, and again. And one more time. What I think about when I do stuff like this is a really beautiful grassy foreground and middle ground for an illustration, okay? If I lock that layer transparency, I'm gonna go ahead and shift that color. Okay, see what I mean? Go down, go dark like that. Go ahead and go super dark and just throw some darks in there to kind of vary things part of the way through. Isn't that fun? Now behind that, if I just make a selection with a lighter greenish yellow kind of a color here, if I just select this area here, sort of following along with the shape of the area I've already painted, and just fill that with green. Look how pretty that is. What do you think about that? Isn't that nice? I could totally see that working for a poster illustration. You know, you've got to have some grassy foreground stuff, maybe a picture book, or really just anything. But that's the Viper brush, and it's just one of the ways I think you could use it. I like when you zoom in too, you can see that pattern. It's really pretty. There you go. What do you think, folks? Any ideas? Make a close-up of a gator. Yeah, Steve, I think this could work with an alligator for sure. Absolutely. Definitely. Good idea. Okay. What about multi-braid? This one's kind of named for what it is. Let me show you. It's kind of like a braid. See that? One way, go back the other. Go one way, and back the other. And that's what you get. You get that kind of braided rope-like appearance to it. So of course, you could use this for hair. But again, don't let that stop you from using it for trees and for anything else you want. It'll follow the direction you move, okay? And as always, you can come into your brush settings and you can choose to change that. You can go to shape dynamics, and for angle, instead of the control being direction, you could change it to something like pen tilt. So now you can see that I'm rotating that brush stamp preview on the canvas. I could pull it that way. I could draw this way. I could draw at an angle like that, right? I could do that. So you're not limited by, you know, the settings that are there. You know, if I do something like this, fill that, make a new layer, draw over top of it with the brush. Now that I have it set for the angle there, you know, I can do this. Whoops, let me do this. Here we go. Do some really pretty water effects using that brush. Isn't that fun? I like it. All right, moving on. What else do we have? The new basic. So remember, basic. What does basic mean? Basic, we're talking about brushes you're going to use every day, day in and day out, for those normal digital painting exercises, you know, the kind of thing where, you know, maybe you just got to render something, you're doing your practice for the day, trying to be a good student, and your teacher's like, all right, we're gonna draw an apple. So you're like, all right, I'll draw the silhouette of the apple and I'll paint it in. Right? See that? Just nice basic brush, gives you nice range of opacity control there with pen pressure. It's got edges that are different front to back, okay? But this is going to be one of your really basic brushes, right? You're just doing some basic digital painting stuff. You resize the brush with the keyboard. It's not going to respond much to pen pressure for size. That's going to control more of the opacity, you know? So refine your shape. A lot of good carving can be done with this brush. See what I mean? You can carve away at stuff. Good carving action. Come over here and add some bounce light down there, right? We don't know what's going on down here, but maybe there's some bounce light up in the air. Select that color, throw it in. Give ourselves a little core. This kind of stuff, you know, your digital painting homework. Making everything, you know, getting used to selecting colors quickly with that toolbar. Pardon me, with the keyboard, my bad. You know, all the things you got to know. Then we go straight for that highlight and just go kablam, kabling. Okay? Make the brush extra small. And there, you've done your homework. Been a good student. I didn't do the shadow yet, but you know. So you can see that's the new basic. You get the hang of it. It feels really good. You can also do, you know, obviously a totally finished painting with this thing. Nobody's stopping you, okay? But for good little rough exercises where you just got to do the basics. This is your friend right here. I know you enjoy painting with it. Let me know what you think. Oily goodness. Any oil painters out there? Digital oil painters? You will enjoy this brush. This is one of those brushes you can add to your list of brushes to use for oil painting emulation here in Photoshop. There are numerous ones in the Mega Pack, for those of you who are familiar with that. And in the most recent set I released in the spring, I had the updates to the oil-rich brushes, which are really good as well. Oily goodness, you're going to have a nice canvas texture, see that? As well as some super chunky random business right there. Well, this comes down to the pen pressure that you're using, right, and the direction that you're moving. That's when you're going to get all that nice stuff. Let's zoom in on that. Let's grab another brighter color here. Just paint right on top of that. What do you think, gang? Pretty nice, right? I don't know, it feels good to me. This is one of those brushes that I get into sort of these phases where I'm painting, where I'm like, oh, I just wanted to use digital oils this week. And that's all I'll do. I'll just get all crazy with one specific medium, one specific kind of set of brushes, really narrow it down and play around with those. Sometimes I just want to do that. So, you might be feeling that yourself and just be thinking like, that's what I want to do this week. Just really in the mood to paint, right? But you don't want to do it in such a way that, you don't get happy accidents and you don't get weird, fun stuff happening. So that's when you grab a brush like this that just provides you with a ton of fun, a ton of texture. And if you use it for just a few minutes, you'll very quickly learn how to control it, how to get it to do what you want, how to sort of scrub with it. It's like scumbling, for those of you who do oil painting. But you'll just figure it out. And because of that nice variation you get in the marks, see that if I just bear down and let it kind of go nuts, I'll do some scattering here and there, right? All that kind of lovely stuff. That's what makes it feel like, okay, I'm not in total control, but I have a decent amount of control, right? Just enough. And if I really want to have total control, what do? Well, you size the brush down. Remember, that's the key. Make your brush a little smaller and you are off to the races. Okay? But let's zoom in on that and take a look at all that yumminess. Look at the canvas texture in there, the variation in the brush strokes with regards to the color dynamics. Right? Now, if I make that brush really tiny, I can just come in here and I can get all nitty-gritty stuff. See that? I can do painting with finer brush strokes, if you will. Okay? I can do all that. It's all there. It's all doable. But what's great is that you don't have to be a realist to work in specific medium. People are like, well, I don't use oils because I'm not a painter. But in a digital environment like this, why don't you just take advantage of the properties of the brush? You don't have to worry about all that stuff. Okay, if you want to paint stuff that's not realistic at all, like look what I'm doing right now. This thing's not realistic, right? This is not a realistic looking head. This is very cartoony. Okay? Maybe that's what I feel like doing, and maybe that's what you want to do. And what really makes it fun is the way the brush strokes look. Okay, so you can do your cartoony stuff, but you can use a brush that's got a lot of texture and a lot of weirdness like this one. And something new and exciting might happen for you with your work that you've not expected. You may even stumble on a whole new style, a whole new way of working that becomes a thing. Maybe it's a phase for you, or maybe it becomes a whole thing that, generates income for you. I don't know. Right? Anything's possible. I've had that happen before. I've done little experiments with style and played around with brushes and stuff. I'll just pop it up on my website. Some art director will see it and say, hey, I like that. That'd be good for this project or that project. And all of a sudden I'm doing something cool and different that I didn't intend to do for money. But that's just kind of how the cookie crumbles, right? that the right expression? Or is that more for negative stuff? Somebody help me with my stupid idioms. What do you think? See that? Look at this guy. Nothing fancy, okay, but fun to look at, right? So play around with the oil brushes and see what you get. Let's take a look at the potato brush. What on earth? When you were in elementary school, did any of you get a chance to make potato stamps? Well, that's what made me think about this. And you carve into the potato a little pattern. And then they give you some ink, and you get to take that ink and just stamp it down. And, well, that's what this is. Okay, why would I make a brush like this? Ah, you know why. Because color dynamics allow you to do something like this, where you can get dense. See that? Dense coverage with a whole bunch of nice geometry inside, right? Look at all that cool stuff. And remember, you can pump up the volume with all that. Turn your hue jitter up to 10. Turn your brightness jitter up to 15. Do it again. Look at the result. Much more intense. Okay, see that? So yeah, sure, it's great for just kind of stamping along, right? But you can also do some other pretty nifty things with it. So sometimes I like to create brushes like this where you look at them first and say, I'm not sure I'd actually use this. But don't be so sure. There are always, ways you might use something and just, it'll surprise you. You may have an illustration you've done that's completely done, okay? Here, let's just quickly do some shapes here. Okay. All right, so let's say I've done this this illustration here. I don't know what it is. Okay, and I say, okay, that's cool, that's done. What if I, over the top of it, use this potato brush, and I just kind of stamp across it like this. Okay. Here we go. And then I change the brush mode to multiply, color burn, maybe just overlay or soft light or hard light or something like that. Reduce the opacity by 50%. Same illustration, but now I've got this cool textural business happening in there, okay? So maybe that's the kind of thing you want to do as a finishing touch, just to kind of unify everything, add another quality to it that's kind of interesting. Think about stuff like that, okay? Alrighty. Moving on to the old picture book scribbler. I've made a few brushes like this for everybody. If you remember the concept brushes and some of the other earlier brush updates from 2019, some scribbling brushes. So this one is in that same vein. This will respond to pen tilt, the angle of the pen, and allow you to do cool stuff like this. A whole nice mess of scribbles. Look at that. Okay, now because I can control the direction, right, I can do things like this. I can control and scribble out to the right, up to the top, and over and to the left. And I can continue to do that. Like so. Now with pressure, I can control how dark and dense the scribbles are. All right. And if I move up and down in the direction I'm drawing, I can make them super dense, right? And as I move across, there's more space in between each mark. The size will also be responsive to pressure. So you can imagine using these. They're great for like picture books if you're drawing some bushes and some other foliage, right, in a little scene. you've got your little background. Okay, and then you've got your hills. And then you take one of these brushes and just add a little bit of texture right there. See how nice? Suggests exactly what you need when you need it. All right, do the same thing with clouds. Why not? Pop some clouds up there. Using the same brush, just kind of scribbling around. Changing the direction here and there. Changing the pressure. And there you go. Now there's a companion to it right here. See the difference? Totally different kind of scribble. Okay. So for that, maybe I want to do suggestion of a tree in the foreground. Okay. I can go dense wherever I want. Like so. And then we can grab another brush. Maybe we grab the potato brush. We size it down and just make ourselves a little tree trunk with a branch. Whatever. Maybe you grab the oil brush and go over it really gently. Like this. Add a little canvas texture here and there. See how we start to play and just combine all these? Right? Maybe the Viper comes in, does something. That's kind of cool. Look at that. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just playing. But if I zoom in on that, that sure is interesting. That's pretty cool, actually. I don't even that Viper, for adding some bits and pieces of texture on top, actually kind of creates this sort of very specific leafy kind of wavy pattern in there. I really like that. All right, so moving on to the boa. What does the boa do? Let's take a look. Well, I'm sure you could have figured out that, again, this has sort of a snake-like kind of appearance to it, doesn't it? And as before, you know, response to pressure, response to size. Pressure will affect size. Okay. And then direction is controlled by whichever direction you move. This is definitely one of the weirdest brushes I've made. Now, remember, go in there, turn on some color dynamics, play around with color, let it do stuff like this. You're going to see subtle variations of color in there. Okay. You can, of course, make it very small and just use it for line work that has a lot of gaps. See that? Now if I pass back over several times, though, I can sort of fill in those areas. But you can do some really nice stuff there as well. And don't forget, there are people out there, many of you, who do lettering. A brush like this can do some pretty interesting stuff. So, you know, this kind of thing might appeal to some out there in the crowd. Go ahead and grab a different color. Make it a little bigger. Do 2 layers. Trace over what you've just drawn. Let that red shine through a little bit. See that? It's pretty fun. Now if you're in fresco, you can use this brush with a multicolor swatch. right, you can select multiple colors from your canvas and paint with them simultaneously on any brush. That's pretty nifty. All right, let's take a look at the Claude brush. Not like the French name C-L-A-U-D-E. No, this is C-L-A-W-E-D, like claws. Because, check it out, I like claw marks, okay? I love this brush for passing over an area and adding texture and controlling the size. So it's almost like kind of cross-hatching option. For example, if I have a shape and I fill it with a color here, I love that I can take a different color and then with the Claude brush, just sort of shade it. See that? I'll just do like this. Using light pressure, heavier pressure, heavier pressure, heavier pressure. And then just kind of tap my way through. Bing, 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 bing. Like that. All right, isn't that's really fun. And I can also change the direction, so I can go up this way. This is all me controlling it with the angle. Pass back over this. I really like that. This is also good for, of course, you guessed it, grasses and things like that. So if I do this, and then go bigger, and then go bigger, right? Smaller in the distance there. Using pressure, super small in the back. See what that does? Pretty nice. I know you'll find cool ways to use this, but I like that brush. Now the pixel burst. So this is one of those brushes, again, I'm doing something one day and I go, oh wow, that's fun. Look at that. So then I decide to make it a brush. And I think this describes what it is. The name says it all, pixel burst. See that? Like a burst of pixels, squares. This one, I did a demo where I was painting with it for tree leaves. Again, just because it's so fun for that. Look at that. Just kind of a different way to think about painting foliage, right? So fun. Now with pen pressure, I can control the size of those little bursts of pixels. And there is a geometric pattern built in, okay? And that's going to show itself every now and then with line work. If you look closely, you'll see an area like this, for example. 1, 2, 3, see that? That whole area. You can see the line work there and here as well, thanks to the texture that's affiliated with it. So good for adding texture, good for painting actual organic matter, and even again, I'm always painting hair with brushes. I just think it's so fun to just make a shape like this and let that be someone's hair. It's just so fun. It's a simple, fun trick. And the very next brush we're going to highlight allows you to then go ahead and draw a face. This is the smashed felt tip brush. And I've made a lot of felt tip brushes for people, but it's been a while since I made a new one, so I thought the time was now for a new one. Everybody wants one. Here it is. Can't get enough inking tools, and I've got some good ones coming out for you in the fall as well. A good number of them. But can't go wrong with this one. This one will allow you to, with light pressure, get all the way down to just the faintest little line, okay? Or none at all, really. And then with heavy pressure, you can kind of get this, look at that. It almost feels like the ink is kind of bleeding out a little bit on the edges. Super fun. This will respond to tilt for direction. Okay, so definitely recommend you try drawing with it. Get some great results. Summer grasses are summer grasses. More summer grasses are more summer grasses. You know what to do with those. Vines. I always love creating these kinds of brushes for you. They really are fun. Use them for decorations, use them for borders. The pull leaf, more fun foliage to draw. The leafy pop, more color dynamics for drawing leaves. And last but not least, the summer plant. We all know these weeds that grow in our backyard, don't we? Well, I had to rush through the end, but you got through all of them, gang. I hope you enjoyed that. I want to say thank you for being here and for hanging out with me. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other. Remember to be kind, and I'll say ciao for now.